Welcome to Daytime Ottawa here on Rogers TV. I'm your host, Derek Fage. Well, we decided as we get closer to the end of the year to do a year-end in review show. And who better to talk about the year that was here in Ottawa than Mayor Jim Watson. He joins me on the show. Mayor Watson, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking. I think it's the first time I've been on the show since you came back. I was on the very first show.
That's right.
You didn't invite me back since. So it's easier to get on CNN than on daytime.
Jim, you're a busy man. It's very difficult to get in touch with you, you know? I mean, I've got to go through a few assistants. The first thing I wanted to talk about, Jim, is you did find yourself in isolation. As I understand, you have been tested negative. Just walk me through what it's been like over the last few days.
Yeah, a member of the mayor's staff, his brother contracted COVID-19, and then he contracted it and was tested and was tested positive. So out of advice from medical professionals, I should get a test. So I went to the Brewer Assessment Center, got a test, and the results came back last night that they were negative, which is good. This is a good time to have a negative test.
That's right.
I have to go back for a second test in a couple of days, so I'm going to stay self-isolated here at my home and just operate through Zoom and Teams and all this other wonderful technology that we have before us.
Well, the big thing when, it comes to the year in review and the mayor and city council is, LRT aside, is your big announcement and the decision not to run again. You said that you made this decision back in 2018, even before the results came in. Let's talk about that a little bit more, Jim, and why that decision so far back?
Well, I knew that by finishing one more term, I'd been mayor. 12 in the new city, 3 in the old city, almost 3 in the old city. And if I was going to have any kind of a second career in terms of my next steps, because I'm too young to retire and I'd be bored to death, I said that I would serve one more term and then see if there's another opportunity to help our community in a non-elected role. And that's why I decided to make that decision. I didn't want to make it public because you make it public on day one, you're a lame duck and everyone's running for mayor. And you saw what happened when I announced I wasn't running for mayor. 3 people the same day announced they're running for mayor. So yeah. I felt it was, in hindsight, a wise decision. Keep it confidential. Lots of people encouraged me to run. My campaign team was raring to go. But I thought now's the time for a good break for me and certainly an opportunity for a new generation of leader to come up and replace me.
Yeah, and when we look at that, Jim, going into 2022, the election coming up and the next mayor, even outside of advice, what sort of qualities do you think that this new mayor needs to have to move the city forward and continue moving it forward?
Well, the challenge that we have in our system is that if most people come from being a ward councillor and run for mayor, and I was in the same boat. I did that when I represented Capital Ward, and as a ward councillor, you're really focused on the micro, on what's happening in neighborhood parks and streets and community centers and so on, and that's very important work. But when you go to the mayor's office, it's a completely different challenge for you. It's not just simply a bigger job. You have to have a bigger outlook. You're looking in the crow's nest, looking out 30,000 feet. What's coming down the line, working with business leaders, political leaders from across the country to ensure that, issues that are such as COVID-19 are dealt with in a straightforward fashion and an efficient fashion, and we give the support we need to our medical professionals. So you're confronted every single day with, something coming through your front door that's usually not good news, usually bad news, and requires a steady hand. But I think the other thing is, leaders don't panic.
Right.
I see far too many politicians who panic every time there's a problem, and they also pander. So my advice is, don't panic, deal with issues head on, be honest up front about them, and don't pander to the loudest group that yells at you to change your mind on something. Stick to your principles, and finally, don't promise things you can't deliver. There's nothing worse than seeing politicians, constantly overpromise and underdeliver. I'd rather have it, the other way, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and Jim, I think it's a fascinating role because there's so much criticism that goes towards, I think most of it goes towards the mayor usually because, you are the leader. And a lot of that criticism, we've heard, Team Watson and this kind of thing over and over again on social media, which I'll get to because that's another topic I want to touch on. But I mean, isn't that the role really of the mayor is, and not only your vision, but, the vision of some of the people that you have, a lot of things that you can relate to around city council and people, share that vision. Is your role not to bring people together and hopefully get everybody on board and, at least the majority on board?
Yeah, you know on the head, Derek. It is, a democracy, and whoever gets the most votes in a race wins the race. And when you go to council, whoever gets the most votes for a particular policy or issue, that's the determining factor, and you move on. And I don't make any apologies for going and working with councils to try to get my agenda through council. I don't subscribe to the view, let's just let everyone do whatever they want. There'd be a 23-person circus. Nothing would get done. There'd be day-long meetings to discuss issues. You got to come forward with a plan, and every single vote, I have to work to get those votes. Sometimes it's a completely different coalition. Other times it's exactly the same. But I don't buy this view that just because people who support my agenda are part of a club, but people on the other side who support another agenda, they're all independent. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The reality is that we don't have a party system. So, and I'm glad we don't, because I think that's unhealthy. It's too much party discipline. The reality is that we have a system where everyone is elected as an independent. Everyone has the same vote. My vote's the same as a member of council's vote.
Jim,
but it's my job to actually coalesce to get things done.
Just going to take a quick break here, Jim. We'll be back in just a moment with Mayor Jim Watson. You're watching Daytime Ottawa here on Rogers TV. Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa Special Edition, our year in review with Mayor Jim Watson. And Jim, this has been a very difficult year this past year for all of us. I wanted to talk to you on, I know it's been difficult professionally for many reasons, I'm certain, LRT being one. But I'd like to talk about it more on a personal level. Has this last year weighed heavily on you personally, Jim?
Well, I explained it to someone the other day, Derek. It's a cross between exhilaration and exhaustion. Every hour, something different comes through your door, and you're dealing with vaccination centers, testing centers, work with our great frontline workers, Dr. Etches, our paramedics. And then there are other times where there's, everything has been canceled because of COVID. And what normally I'd be going to 12 or 13 events on a weekend is down to 0. So you go on a real roller coaster ride. And the challenge we have with COVID, of course, it's the single largest challenge I've ever faced as mayor, because it affects every single person in the world, let alone our city. And we're very blessed. We have a great team. Our vaccination rate for adults is the best of any big city in Canada. And our rates for inoculating children 5 to 11 is number 1 in Ontario. So we've done a really good job, but we're in another battle with another variant, and we have to remain vigilant. And it has been, it's been tough on anyone who's in any leadership role, because you've got all of the day-to-day concerns of running the city added onto that, an issue like COVID that has been overwhelming so many healthcare communities around the world.
Let's turn our attention to the LRT, Jim. I know this is, it's been a difficult year for riders. It's been a difficult year for council, a difficult year for yourself. This partnership that we have, moving forward, I mean, if you look at what's happening right now, are you encouraged? And I think we have reason to be encouraged at the moment, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think, we're in a much better place today than we were obviously several months ago. We've had about 6 or 7 weeks of really good service. This month, as you know, Councillor Hubler and I put forward a proposal that there's no charge, so people can ride the buses, paratranspo, and the trains without being charged, just as a small token of our apology to the people for not providing the kind of service that we paid for. And so you're quite right. I think things have turned around for the better. There'll always be, there was, I think, a train stoppage a couple of weeks ago because someone was on the tracks. These things are sometimes out of our control, but we've got to get the consistent trains coming out of the yards that are safety checked. We have a new firm that's doing, I think, a remarkable job, and you're seeing the proofs in the pudding. You've seen really good service for the last 6 or 7 weeks. We just got to make sure that we can contain that level of consistency and level of quality for years, not just weeks.
Jim, is it fair to say this would be your greatest regret as mayor, is how this has turned out?
Well, I've been asked a lot about regrets, if I have any regrets, and I say, I don't dwell on regrets because I can't change the past. I still think that the route we chose and the system we chose was the right one. And you have to remember, prior to the two issues in August and September that were quite severe, we had about a year and a half of 98, 99% on-time train service. And you didn't really talk about it a long time. You talked about it for the first 6 months because lots of problems. Then we went on to a fairly large streak of very good service. Then we had those two issues in August and September, and now we're back to very good service. And I think people will also recognize this is only the first phase, and it's a challenge because you get everyone from the West End coming to the terminus station, which is Tunney's, and that becomes a crowding issue, and then everyone in the East End is at Blair. Once we get to stage 2, which is under construction now, you'll see us going farther west, farther east, and farther south. It'll be a much more complete system, and then ultimately, we want phase 3 to go ahead in the fastest growing parts of the city in Canada, Stittsville, and Barrhaven.
Are you happy to see that the Ontario Auditor General is coming in to do a report on this? Because I know you didn't want the judicial inquiry. Is this something you're happy about? And do you think we'll find anything from this Auditor General report?
Well, it's actually the City Auditor General that's doing the review, and then it's a provincial inquiry, not a judicial inquiry that the province is announced. We haven't seen any of the details from the province, so I don't know what their terms of reference or scope are. We have nothing to hide. I think they will discover that there were issues of competence. The one derailment was because 12 bolts were not properly secured on the bottom of the train. So I think, I didn't want taxpayers spending a lot of City of Ottawa tax dollars to do a judicial inquiry, because the full cost of that would be borne by Ottawa taxpayers. So the province is doing its own. We're an open book, happy to allow them to see any documents that they feel are necessary. But at the end of the day, I think, my preoccupation is not worrying about an inquiry. It's continuing to get the level of service the public demand and should get for the money we're paying.
Well, Jim, I'm going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back speaking with Mayor Jim Watson in just a moment. You're watching Daytime Ottawa, special edition of our Year in Review with the Mayor. Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa. This is our special edition, our Year in Review with Mayor Jim Watson. And Jim, let's turn our attention to some of the highlights. As you said, you don't have regrets, but when you do look back, and you don't necessarily like to look back on regrets, but let's look back on some of the projects you're most proud of. What stands out to you?
Well, thanks for that, Derek. There are a couple of them. When I got elected in 2010, there were so many issues that were basically stuck in the mud for, in some cases, decades, in some cases, years. A good example is Lansdowne. How many debates did we go through, tear it down, build it up, put it in a park, do something else? We landed on a project I think is very, very exciting for the city. It's not perfect, but I think it's a world of difference and positivity compared to what was there before, which was 40 acres of asphalt and rundown buildings. We've got a new series of sports franchises, 1,000 jobs created on site, green space, and apple orchard. That's a good project that I think will last the test of time. I think things like the Innovation Center at Bayview Yards, creating Invest Ottawa, and the Innovation Center, which we wanted for over 15 years. There was calls for an Innovation Center, and we got it opened and delivered. The Ottawa Art Gallery, housed in really, really crummy facilities in Arts Court. We got a great partnership with a hotel, the Germain Hotel, a condominium, and the Ottawa Art Gallery, brand new Ottawa Art Gallery, open 7 days a week, free of charge admission, and Arts Court renovated. And the same with community centers, in Barrhaven, in Cumberland, in Canada. These were projects that were promised to communities for many, many years, and they never seemed to leave the drawing board and get shovels in the ground. So I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to be aggressive and proactive on these. A good example, Derek, is the bridges that we built. The Max Keeping Bridge by the baseball stadium, the Jackie Holtzman Bridge in Kitchissippi, the Juno Bridge along the Airport Parkway, the Vimy Memorial Bridge in Riverside South, the Flora Foot Bridge that connects Old Ottawa East and the Glebe. These were all on people's wish lists for a long, long time, and we actually got the job done. So I'm proud of our council, many councils over the last 3 terms that worked hard to get these projects in the budget, financed, and constructed.
Jim, over your time as mayor here in the city of Ottawa, what have you learned about this city, and what have you learned about the people of Ottawa?
Well, on the city itself, you realize how big the city of Ottawa is. I think I've shown you, Derek, my map where I've superimposed the cities of Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto. All of those cities fit within the boundaries of the city of Ottawa, and we're still bigger by 100 square kilometers. A good example is West Carleton is roughly the same size as Calgary. Calgary has a population of 1.3 million. West Carleton has a population of about 30,000. So you realize that Ottawa is a big piece of geography. 82% of Ottawa is green space or forest or agricultural land. We have 1,100 farms, working farms in Ottawa. And then on the people side, I've learned the generosity and the kindness of people. You always hear the negativity, particularly through social media, but the kindness of people, whether they're helping out during the tornado or the 2 floods that we had, or the ice storm when I was first elected mayor, or the COVID crisis where people need help, particularly seniors who are shuttered and can't get out to do grocery shopping. Neighbor helping neighbor, stranger helping stranger.
Jim, you mentioned social media. I'd like to touch on that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's be honest, that's what social media is. In this day and age, city councilors, let's be honest, politicians from every level of government have had to deal with something. What's it been like for you? Has it been difficult? Does it, I mentioned, do things weigh on you personally? Does it get to you?
Yeah, it does. I think, people who say it doesn't probably aren't telling the truth. The reality is we're all human beings. When I started, I had very thin skin, didn't like any criticism. My mother would always be upset if I was attacked in the newspaper or something. But it's gotten worse because of social media and the anonymity of social media. Anyone can put together 10 or 15 accounts and spend, their day in their basement, attacking politicians. Catherine McKenna, the federal minister, was under attack all the time, just disgusting comments about her. And I've had, homophobic slurs, sent to me, on a fairly regular basis. But you realize that, these people don't have the courage of their convictions to put their name to it. And you try not to let it bog you down, but it does. It becomes corrosive after a while.
So how do you deal?
It's one of the things I'm looking forward to. Well, I'm after politics, I'm hoping not to be obsessed with Twitter and social media. I want to stay in touch and so on, but I'm not going to, turn into one of those people in my basement, with 12 Twitter accounts attacking people.
Do you turn off? Do you turn off social media when you finally get home at the end of the day, Jim? I don't. I may look at it a couple of times in the evening before I go to bed, often to see if, the legitimate news feeds that have something that I may need to know about right away or the next day. But it's hard to turn off when you're in a position like yourself. And I feel the same way, right? As a host of a television show, it's hard to turn off for sure. We're going to take one more break. We'll be back with Mayor Jim Watson. You're watching Daytime Ottawa and our year in review. Welcome back to our year in review here on Daytime Ottawa as we take this entire episode to speak to Mayor Jim Watson. And Jim, my question for you in this last segment is, when you look and you see unfinished business, what would you say is some unfinished projects, unfinished business in these last months for you as Mayor of Ottawa?
Well, I think there are three projects that are underway or about to get underway. I would have liked to have seen them done sooner, but timing was not on our side. The new Central Library is going to be a spectacular addition around LeBreton Flats, and I think that's very exciting. We start construction in January, so I'll be there for the sod turning, but won't be there for the official opening. And then the Civic Hospital, even though it's not a municipal facility, it's the largest, government healthcare investment in our city's history, the new Civic Campus on Carling Avenue. I believe they're going to start construction next year, which is going to be another city building project. And then, of course, phase 2 of LRT, which is underway right now, and those stations will open later on in the next couple of years. They're staggered from south to east to west.
I certainly wouldn't consider asking you to endorse anyone, of course, as mayor, but can you see yourself down the road of perhaps endorsing somebody?
Yeah, I don't rule that out.
Okay.
I don't know who else is going to run. There's three people who've already announced, but I've heard at least 3 or 4 other individuals that are good, credible people that will run as well. And I think the public will have a very good choice of candidates from all spectrums of the political field.
How important do you think it is, Jim, moving forward into the next election, is getting more new faces around the table? I mean, you mentioned, of course, there's already 2 that have thrown their hat in the ring that are city councillors. So, of course, those 2 positions will be open. Do you think it's going to be critical to have new faces around the table?
We always want to mix. There are if 2 individuals from council are running, there may be a third. That means there's going to be at least 3 new councillors there. Scott Moffat is announced he's not running. Janet Harder is announced she's not running. I think you always need a blend of experience and with some fresh ideas and new people. But there's a very good group of people that I've had the honor of working with at City Council, and I'm not one of these who says let's just throw everyone out just for the sake of change.
Right.
You want stability and you want continuity and you want that experience because it takes about a year to get up to speed on all the major issues dealing with the city. The city's a $5 billion corporation now, and it requires good, solid people around the council table.
Can you give us any hints on what career path, what your next career path may be? Have you given any thought to it?
Well, maybe a guest host on daytime. That could be one of the options to replace you when you're replacing Rob Snow on City News. I haven't really, it's difficult as mayor to go out looking for a job because I still have a job and I want to finish that properly. But if something comes my way and I find that it's a good fit, then I'd like to do that. Otherwise, I'm more than happy just to be a volunteer again. I did a lot of volunteering before I became elected, and unfortunately not a lot of time to volunteer as mayor, but I used to help out at the soup kitchen at the Shepherds and sit on a couple of community boards of directors, not-for-profit boards of directors. So those kinds of things excite me and gives me an opportunity to give back to the city that's been so kind to me.
Let's have a little fun to wrap this up, Jim. Music, what are you listening to right now?
I love Sarah McLachlan and Winter's Night, beautiful song. And I love Jan Arden as well. And I've had the chance to meet both of them in different capacities. So, yeah, those are 2 that I really enjoy. They're great talent.
What about movies? What type of movies do you like? Do you watch holiday movies around this time?
No, I like Mission Impossible, action movies, those kinds of things. I'm not big into superheroes, but
Okay.
I think Tom Cruise has done a great job with the Mission Impossible series. The problem is I don't get a lot of time, to go to movies.
Yeah.
Now I do, but the movie theaters were closed for the longest period of time, so I didn't get a chance. So I think I saw the James Bond movie. It was the last one I saw, which was a couple of weeks ago with a couple of former councillors that I served with.
Nice.
So that was fun to get caught up and to watch James Bond.
Jim, on behalf of all of us here at Rogers TV, congratulations on a great career. Certainly looking forward to the months ahead. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to you and your family. Thanks for spending time with us. That does it for this edition of Daytime Ottawa and our year in review with the mayor.